there is some apologetic significance to this, because I've interacted with several atheists over the years who would say, well, even if Christianity was true, I wouldn't want it to be true. Heaven will be so boring. Nobody wants to live forever, and that boredom. So the next topic of the book that you wanted to address is that it's not boring. And
yes,
and there is some apologetic significance to this, because I've interacted with several atheists over the years who would say, well, even if Christianity was true, I wouldn't want it to be true. Heaven will be so boring. Nobody wants to live forever, and that boredom. Right. Tell us about that.
Yeah.
Why isn't heaven boring?
Okay, I've thought a lot about this, and a lot of it comes down to, well, I think one, our sinful fallen state can't comprehend eternity, and so we, because we're finite, we're used to thinking of things ending and having a beginning. So an endless state, first of all, you think to yourself, well, wouldn't we run out of things to do? Yeah. So to illustrate that, have you ever seen the movie or the show The Good Place?
Mm-mm.
Okay, well, I'll try not to spoil much, but I highly recommend it.
Okay.
There's obviously it's written by the same guy, Michael Schur, who wrote like The Office or worked on The Office and Parks and Rec and Brooklyn Nine-Nine, those things. So I can't endorse it, whole cloth, because there's some inappropriate jokes in there, obviously. But that said, I think that show perfectly captures the theology of the Western imagination when it comes to the afterlife. So let me point out one or two scenes from that show. It's kind of toward the end, but I'll try not to spoil too much. So there's the main character. She gets to heaven, and she is met with this party, right? We're finally there. So they show up at this party, and everyone's just kind of drinking, and it's almost like they're in a club. They're playing pool, it's in a bar type of a thing, and everyone's there. There's famous people everywhere. They meet Cleopatra, and so they're just kind of geeking out. Well, the longer they're there, they realize everyone that's there are pleasure zombies. They're bored of having all of their trivial needs met. You can only go-kart with monkeys for so long before you get bored of it, right?
Yeah.
That's an example from the show. And so while the main character is talking with Cleopatra, she keeps popping in these milkshakes out of nowhere. She sips it for a little bit, she throws it away, and then all of a sudden a new one shows up in her hand. And she gets angry about it. She throws that one, and then it's in her hand again. She says, you just get so bored. Like, you can only drink so much of these. Like,
wow.
We have nothing to do. There's no end to this place. So we feel like there's no real, urgency to try new things or whatever. And something that they say is so interesting. They say this place is filled with entropy. Now, this is so critical. So what does entropy have to do with heaven? So entropy is a scientific word, right? Just talking about energy after a while decays, right? The universe is going to run out of gas eventually. That's usually what we're talking about. Well, they apply that to the ability for activities or really anything to satisfy us, and that has a diminishing return, right? So it's the drug addict who has the highest high is the first time, and then it's diminishing returns, and you can apply that to anything. Money only satisfies so much, and then diminishing return. Well, what they do is they apply that same fallen world principle of entropy and sin into heaven, and they say this is why heaven would be boring, because eventually everything will just wear out. It won't be as exciting. You can't do these, and eventually after an eternity of drinking milkshakes, you'll be sick of milkshakes, right? Well, heaven is not like that. Heaven is an unfallen state. You don't assume entropy in the afterlife, because it is a place of all goodness. It is a place that is infinitely satisfying. The Lord Jesus Christ is there, and he perfectly satisfies our soul. So Instead of thinking of it like this, you have to think of it like this, the opposite direction. So let
Mhm.
me illustrate that, because I'm talking a lot. I don't know if you
No,
want to ask questions.
no. I'm
Uh,
loving this. Keep it
cool.
going.
Okay, so here's how I think of it. Even in our culture, which celebrates adolescence and sort of the young uh, vision of love, right?
Mhm.
So the early phase, right? The
Yeah.
honeymoon phase. Even in our culture, we still have an appreciation for those old couples who've been together for 50 years, who
Mhm.
say to each other, and our heart kind of gets light when we hear them say this: I'm more in love with you today than the day we met.
Mhm.
And when we hear that, we think, I want that.
Yeah.
Why do I want that? I should want this young infatuation phase, right? And yet, we find ourselves having a longing for this mature love that
Mhm.
is long, and that has gone through a lot, right?
Yeah.
Well, what if we extrapolate that same principle into heaven, and our love and our ability to receive love for Christ and to Christ will continue to grow and grow forever, and we will never grow tired of his love. So we will enter into a state where our capacity will always be increasing, not
Mm.
decreasing, right?
Wow.